So here we are this morning. Today, as I said, we're going to continue our discussion about freedom and the aspects of living freely. And I'm going to talk about a religion or a philosophy, depending on how you look at it, that isn't often discussed, and that is Taoism. Taoism. In the ancient Chinese culture, there arose this concept of yin and yang. And it originally was illustrated with the image of a single mountain that had a relationship with the sun. And the yin was the shady side of the mountain, and the yang was the sunny side of the mountain. And as the sun moved, the sunny side slowly grew shady, and the shady side slowly grew sunny. One gently flowed into the other effortlessly. Darkness flowed into light, and lightness flowed into darkness. No striving, it just happened. Yin is always moving and flowing into yang, and yang is always moving and flowing into yin. And the concept that these words and this image is trying to illustrate is that opposites are never truly polar and absolute opposites. Summer is yang, and winter is yin, but the two flow together to make the experience of a year. Quiet is yin and loud is yang, but the two flow together to create the experience of sound. Yang is the masculine, active and strong, and yin is the feminine, the quiet, the receding, the dark. Yet the two flow together within each and every individual. Extroversion is yang. Introversion is yin. But the two preferences are a part of both of us, or they're both a part of all of us, right? There's no better or worse in any of these. There's no good or evil, just a flow between polarities in the experience of the whole. And the point of the philosophy of Taoism is to find balance and to allow the flow to keep going and not get stuck in either opposite edge of anything. When there's a blockage of flow, there's illness and stagnation. Think about that. Because there's an imbalance that's created because the flow has been stopped. When we get attached to either end of a pole, we miss the opportunity to experience the opposite end of any concept, right? We miss the opportunity of balance that's found in the middle, wholeness that's found in the middle. When we allow our mental or emotional energy to get stuck in any pattern, we're not allowing the flow of the divine life, that energy, to guide us in each moment. What we know is that life is big enough. Life is big enough to contain all seeming opposites. There is going to be a sunny side of life with joy and happiness, right? And parties and laughter and goofiness and togetherness. That's going to be a part of life. But there's also going to be this shady part of life with quietude and sorrow and pain and tears and solitude. That's the shadier part of life. And the healthiest thing that we can do is what? It's to allow ourselves to have all these opposites flowing within us in our experiences and understand that the yin always flows into yang and the yang always flows into yin. You will have a full and balanced life if you kind of flow with these changes. That's the essence of the philosophy of Taoism. Often in the circumstances of life and relationships of life, we have over time become attached. We get attached to the way we show up as ourselves, right? In navigating the twists and turns of what's going on with us, we've figured out the safest way to get through things. The meest way. There's a me way to get through life. We've kind of honed our personality and our preferences in such a way that we know our script, don't we? We know who we're supposed to be. We know the path of the least pain and discomfort. Based on our experiences, we've figured out the best way to go through everything is to be perhaps stoic and reserved, or perhaps bossy and assertive. Another one might choose to be quiet and withdrawn, or you might be self-protected and shy, or cynical and critical. That's another way. We might be all showy and shiny, or we might be dull and invisible. And pretty soon, the people around us begin to expect us to stay consistent, to stay you. You stay you. You do you. You know, I know what you are, and I like how you are, and I figured out how to be with you, right? And so they want us to stay that way, and they begin to craft their presence in our lives based on who we are. So they begin to become a version of themselves that best matches who we've shown ourselves to be to them. So then we become stuck in this dynamic with each other. We get stuck in a role and our energy gets fixated on kind of a certain path. But the Tao would say to allow our nature and our energy to shift and flow freely from moment to moment to moment as we flex and show up in the current moment appropriately and powerfully and effectively. There is no need to think that one way of being in the world is necessarily right. You know, maybe you take a shady approach sometimes, and maybe you take a sunny approach another time, and balance is what's being called forth by the whole, because there's a variety of experiences that we have and situations that we encounter. And the word Tao means the way, or the path. It means like your point of view or your orientation in life. You see, your mind is always moving, and you're always moving. And the Tao encourages us to stay on the way of nature or the way of spirit. The way of the Tao is to follow the nature in all things. It's like nature already figured out things. Nature already figured out how things are supposed to flow. And if we can just put ourselves in accord with the natural way, the Tao would say, we might not have as many illnesses and troubles and difficulties and conflicts if we can figure out the natural way to flow in a situation. So let's look at the symbol of yin and yang. You've seen this before, right? I want you to notice that there's a little touch of the opposite at the heart of each side. There's a little touch of light in the dark, and there's a little touch of dark in the light. I like to think that that little touch is a hint of what is to come. And that hint always shows up. You know, in the middle of the night, there's this tipping point where we realize, oh, we're headed back towards the morning. Heading back towards dawn again. And at midday, there's this tipping point where the shadows start growing, and we realize, oh, we're heading back into darkness again. In the middle of winter, think about it, there will be this sunny day, and this daffodil pokes up, and you realize, oh, we're heading back into another season. It's flowing. And in the middle of the summer, there'll be that sudden chilly breeze, that there's a hint of a change in the weather. In the middle of heartache, there's a hint of hope. In the middle of hope, there's a hint of a loss to come. In life, there's always a touch of the opposite experience in the middle of the other. I think it's there to remind us that this too shall pass, and that the flow will be taking a turn. We're going to take a turn again. Naturally, we're going to take a turn. In our most poignant experiences in life, you're going to always find opposite feelings present. Think about the last wedding you attended. Think about the last wedding you attended. For me, it was last summer with Gina and Sarah here in this room. I think there's some nodding heads. We were there. You know, throughout the ceremony, there were these moments of great solemnity and quiet and seriousness. There were a few, touching moments where tears flowed, as there are in all weddings. But then in the middle of it, I don't even remember what was funny, but there was something funny, and then there was laughter in the room and joy. There was a touch of everything available and present in that experience. And every wedding I've ever attended, they're mostly like that. They're mostly serious, But then somehow something funny gets brought up, and then there's a lightheartedness to it. If you've ever been in the room at the birth of a baby, it's the same thing, feels the same way, right? There's laughter and joy and relief, but there are also tears, and not just from the baby itself, right? The parents and the grandparents or whoever's in the room are laughing and they're crying at the same time, and the nurses get all emotional too, and it's the wisdom of the Tao. It's in the room, it's a natural moment, and nature's flowing in that experience. Funerals and memorials are the same way. They're usually balanced too, inevitably somebody they'll share some memory that just cracks everybody up, and that they're wiping their tears and they're laughing at the same time, and there's this touch of opposite to remind everyone that this is a temporary heaviness. Life is going to go on and it's going to flow into something else. Lightness of being is on its way. The entire situation will flow into balance. That's how life works. But in any of those situations, think about this for a second. In any of those situations I just described, some of us can get stuck. We can become stuck and we block the flow of the opposite experience. You know what that looks like. Think of someone who holds back their laughter, even though we're all cracking up. They're like, I need to sit here, right? They're not going to allow their emotions to flow into a different way. Or think of someone who scolds everybody when things are supposed to be quiet, but something strikes us as very funny, and all the scolding is not going to stop the giggles. It's just not going to. It's happened in this room. My daughter's a librarian. I'm sure that she's the one scolding everybody like, "There's no Tao in the library, people." We can resist accepting that life contains all polar opposites. We can resist that. In every relationship, there will be struggle, but there will also be ease. There will be anger, but there will be laughter. In every baby's first year, there are going to be things that will be milestones celebrated. There's also going to be some challenges too. In every lifetime, there are going to be memories that we're going to cherish, and there are going to be memories that we just would like to pass without remark, right? And we get stuck when we expect the honeymoon to last forever, or when we expect that the baby will never get sick or have a struggle, or when we expect a person's life to be a model example of some single character trait. We're going to get stuck. And according to the Tao, the ultimate goal for a person is to live at peace with the way, the Tao, and recognize that everything that happens in life should be accepted as a part of the source of life. The source of life connects all things and expresses through all things. And when we realize that spirit is in all those little details of life, we can just relax. We can relax because we know that it's going to flow naturally to balance and order. And if we're in the middle of something that doesn't feel like balance and order, we just need to back up and realize that it's flowing towards that and go with that flow. When we purposefully direct our thought towards this peace that I'm talking about, when we center our beliefs in this peace and we know that balance and order is flowing, when we intend to live in this peace and choose peacefully, then we are in the flow of the Tao. I like to think of the Tao, or the natural way, as being in tune. In tune. Ellen and I have had many conversations about tuning instruments and music being in tune. An instrument being in tune. If I understand correctly, when the pitch is pure and in tune, there is not dissonant vibration around the note. It's just pure. It's right there, right? If it's sharp, the energy is vibrating too quickly. If it's flat, the energy is vibrating too slowly. And when it's in tune, the energy is neutral and clear. That's the Tao. That's the Tao. And if you think of any opposites, the middle is the Tao. The middle is the natural way. There is a middle between masculine and feminine that is genderless and godlike. And in that space, a person can respond to any situation appropriately from either expression. There's a middle between aggressive and passive. That's just pure strength. And in that natural space, a person can respond from that soft strength. That's the Tao. When our energy is centered, not vibrating too quickly or too slowly, we're in balance, we're in tune, we're in the flow, we're non-reactive, we're peaceful, we're free, we're in the Tao. And the first place to practice the freedom of the Tao is in our minds, right? Our mind chatter often prevents us from finding our center, doesn't it? You know, our thoughts are constantly racing around any topic we can think of, and we quickly search our history bank of thoughts and memories to try to figure out how we're supposed to respond in this situation. And our mind's just going crazy. We rapidly race ahead and worry. We try to figure out what possible outcome there might be. What are we dealing with right now, and where's it going? I got to get ahead of it, right? We judge and compare and analyze and fret in our minds all day long. That's what our minds are doing. The voice in our head is our ego, and it's constantly trying to survive and be individualized and be protected by our fears. And we're often overwhelmed and confused and anxious as we chase our thoughts in our minds. The Tao of freedom has us remember that we're not the voice in our head. We're not the voice in our head. We are the one that's aware of the voice in our head. We are the one that can stop the voice in our head. We're behind the thoughts. We're the one realizing we are having thoughts. We are not our thoughts. We are our mind. We have a mind. We are not our mind. Just waking up to the awareness of our true identity is so helpful in separating ourselves from our thoughts. Get some space. Elizabeth Gilbert, she wrote the book Eat, Pray, Love. She's actually written many things. Highly recommend her as an author. She says this: you need to learn how to select your thoughts just the same way you select your clothes every day. This is a power you can cultivate. If you want to control things in your life so bad, work on the mind. That's the only thing you should be trying to control. Elizabeth Gilbert. It's normal. It's normal to want our lives to go in a certain way, and we try to control how we get there. You know, so often our lives are going exactly as we intended them to go. And we're still miserable in our own minds. We're still chasing around. Our freedom comes from quietening our minds to accept life just as it is. Knowing fully and trusting fully, the yin will always give way to the yang. The darkness will always yield to the light. The difficult will always give way to the easy. You have to trust that life will always flow into balance. Give yourself that ability to live freely in whatever's going on at this current moment. If you feel like something's out of balance, seek the opposite energy to bring that situation in tune. Tune your instrument, but keep playing and trust the flow to be headed back toward balance always. And I want to introduce one more element of Taoism. It's called Wu Wei. Wu Wei means action without attachment. When we release our attachment to things going in a certain way, our attachment to an outcome, if you will, we simply allow things to be as they are. When we do this, we increase our awareness that there's a power operating through us, and we can trust it. We can trust that we're always flowing toward our greatest good. We've got to remember that many, many elements are contributing to the creation of our experiences. Yes, our thoughts and intentions are powerful, but we got to remember, we can never forget that there are natural laws at play, there are spiritual laws at play, and there are many other people involved in creating everything that we're experiencing. So we have to trust. Wu Wei, as a way of being, is trusting that each step will be revealed, each action will be shown, and that where we are right now is exactly where we are supposed to be, to allow everything to unfold in what? In balance, in order. It is not our strength, it's not our might, nor our efforts that cause anything to happen. It is spirit energy flowing naturally in all things. And that spiritual energy continues to keep everything in balance, everything in perfection and in harmony at all times. We don't need to harness this power. We only need to keep our awareness of it and stay receptive to its guidance. Neil Donald Walsh wrote a book called Conversations with God, which is a very interesting read if you've never read it. It's almost like he's channeling, and he writes what the God of his understanding reveals to him. And this is what he wrote. He said, "To live your life without expectation, without the need for specific results, that is freedom. That is godliness. That is how I live." As I said, it's totally normal to have expectations about how things turn out. And it's normal to set goals and intentions for ourselves. You know, in this teaching, we encourage you. We encourage you to use your mind and your thoughts to determine a point on the horizon for yourself and never doubt that you'll reach that point. We encourage you to not think of any limitation that would prevent you from getting to that point on the horizon. But then the next step is to release your expectations of when and how you will get to that point on the horizon. We encourage you to go with the flow of the universal energy that gets behind your picking that point on the horizon. Ernest Holmes put it this way in the textbook. Knowing this in your thought, in other words, knowing that point on the horizon in your thought, work in perfect peace and calm. Always expect the good. Have enthusiasm, and above all, have a consciousness of love, a radiant feeling flowing through your consciousness at all times. That consciousness of love, that radiant feeling, is that flow of energy that flows you toward that point. If our goal is freedom, the pathway to freedom is through trust. Trusting ourselves can sometimes be so hard because we know our own limitations. We know our fallibilities. We know how to make decisions and how we choose. We have evidence to prove that we sometimes make choices that have unintended outcomes. And we blow that trust in ourselves, don't we? So what or who can we trust? My point today is that our freedom comes from trusting Spirit, trusting the universe, trusting the divine way of life, trusting the Tao, trusting the way of balance. Trust the flow and know that it's always moving towards the balance that we crave. As Holmes said, we've got to have a consciousness of love flowing through us at all times. And when we go with the flow of a consciousness or an awareness of love, we are at peace, and our job is to relax and stay connected to Source. Relax. As I become still and I look within, I can acknowledge that there is only one power and source of all things. And this power communicates with me through my intuition and guides me toward my balance. This power expresses itself in me, through me, and as me. And as it does that with my whole life. My freedom springs from this awareness that this is the truth. The only action I need to take is to accept the divinity within me and within each person that I encounter. What could be more liberating than that, right? What could be more liberating than to allow myself to truly relax, and go with the flow. It's fine. So there's one sentence affirmation that I'd like for you to read with me. My freedom is the awareness that all things live together for the good of all other things. And I allow myself to go with the flow of this eternal love. And so it is.